I once had an ugly high school friend, yet all the girls were obsessed with him, and he had them eating from his hand like pigeons, because he treated them bad, and he used the oldest and most reliable way to cause psychological obsession. He used unpredictable rewards. Let's see how it works. Harvard's psychologist Skinner placed a seed dispenser in a cage for pigeons. He got them used to receiving a seed each time they pressed the button. This is called constant rewards. You press the button and get a seed, you press it again, another seed. The pigeons learned how it worked. They would press only when hungry. So far, so good. But then Skinner made a change. He reprogrammed the button, and now it was like flipping a coin. Sometimes it'd give a seed, and other time nothing. Maybe you'd press it once and nothing. Then you'd press again and nothing, until the third time it'd give you a seed. He then discovered that the pigeons developed an obsessive behavior. They wouldn't press the button only when hungry. They would press it more, leading to Skinner reprogramming the button even more. It worked less every time. First it worked 100% of the time, then 1/3 of the time, then once every 10 times. He would make them work more each time, and they grew more obsessed each time. They would press the button like crazy despite not being hungry. He then reprogrammed the button to give food 1% of the time, and his pigeons became totally obsessed, pressing the button at a speed of 150 times per minute for 16 hours straight until they would die or fall exhausted. What my ugly high school friend would do with girls looked a lot like what Skinner would do to pigeons. There are two main points. The first one is that no pigeon would grow obsessed with a button that didn't work at the beginning. They wouldn't acknowledge it. What drove them crazy was getting used to a button that worked well, and once they were used to that, the button stopped working. The same way in which a pretty girl wouldn't acknowledge an ugly guy that treated her poorly since the beginning, but he wouldn't treat them bad at first. My cousin was one of his victims. At first, my cousin would say that she would never date that ugly guy, but he was consistent. He would bring her a gift every day. He would go over to her house once in a while. He'd always text goodnight. My cousin got used to his constant attention, and at first she didn't care, until one night she didn't receive a text, and that was the first time she went to bed thinking of him. In the very same way, Skinner reprogrammed the button so that it stopped working and the pigeons began obsessing more and more. My high school friend began modifying his own behavior. He would give her less attention each time, and my cousin went crazy. She did not understand why he was less kind to her each time. Sometimes he would forget to text her goodnight. Sometimes he would even stop visiting her in her classroom to drop off the daily gift. My cousin didn't understand why her attention dispenser was no longer working. She, who was used to being a bit mean to him, would now text him. Yet he would take longer each time that happened and would even leave her on read at times. Things started getting worse and worse. She was more insisting with him each time, and he would pay less attention each time. I remember she would cry and say the worst thing is that he is extremely ugly. My cousin ended up losing her mind and would even text him despite being left on read, and if it didn't work, she'd call him. One time she even went to knock at his door. This pretty girl, just like all his ex-girlfriends and other girls at my school, went crazy like pigeons with a button that would give them constant attention and slowly became unpredictable and stopped working. It is important to note that these kinds of tricks work, but they only work short-term. There are no shortcuts to being attractive. You need to focus on your habits long-term to be attractive.